Welcome to today's post-film discussion, Children of Peace, featuring Maayan Schwartz, the writer and director, and Classrooms Without Borders scholar Avi Ben-Hur. I am Ellen Resnick, the Educational Programs and Outreach Manager at Classrooms Without Borders. CWB stands as a beacon of experiential learning dedicated to enriching minds and hearts through education. As we celebrate 13 years of groundbreaking programming, our commitment to fostering inclusivity and social justice remains steadfast. Together, we have hosted an impressive array of programs over the past 3 years, welcoming nearly 79,000 participants from 58 countries and 46 states. While the numbers speak volumes, it's the stories, connections, and transformations that truly define our impact. In 2024, we are thrilled to unveil 35 captivating events planned to date with over 1,600 registrants to date, with more in the planning stages. If you would like to make a donation to support our mission, I will drop the donation link in the chat for you in just a few moments. It is now my pleasure to introduce today's guest, the writer and director of our film, Maayan Schwartz, who completed his BFA at Sapir Film School and has directed several short films, including My Friend Yanni, the official selection of the IDFA 2016, and Acting Week, which won awards at the Cinema South Film Festival and Buenos Aires International Film Festival. We are also as honored as always to bring to you our in-house scholar, Avi Ben-Hur. Avi is a Brooklyn native who moved to Israel in 1983. He has a rich background in education and guiding. From 2003 to 2008, he was the director of the Archaeological Seminar School for Israeli Tour Guides and has since participated in rewriting the curriculum of the national guiding courses for the Israeli Ministry of Tourism. Avi has lectured, taught, and facilitated workshops around the world, specializing in political issues, interfaith programs, and Holocaust studies. Please send any questions you have throughout this program directly to Avi in the chat. We will do our best to answer them all. And with that, Avi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ellen, so much. Welcome, everybody. Maayan, thanks for coming. So first of all, if it's not clear to most of you, as you can see from my background, I'm no longer in Jerusalem right now. Actually, the background has nothing to do with it. I'm still in the United States towards the end of a 1-month swing through, including for Classrooms Without Borders. So I'm actually transmitting to you from Stamford, Connecticut, and not from Jerusalem. But Maayan presumably is in Neve Shalom, and that's important as well. So I want to, as usual, I want to zoom out and kind of give you some context for some of the things you heard about and perhaps saw in the film before we start our conversation with Maayan. And even before I start that, let me say the following. I've been visiting with groups to Neve Shalom for, I guess, about 28 years. And virtually all of our teachers that we've brought through Classrooms Without Borders to Israel on seminars, or superintendents, headmasters, we've taken to Neve Shalom, and we've actually met the educational staff there. So, including last summer that we came to Israel. So it's something that is very well known to us. Okay, and so that's something that I think is important. And I think the film for me was exciting because it was a kind of a different view of a place that I've been to many times. And giving it a perspective, I think, which is important, and we'll talk about it in a moment. What I'm doing right now is I want to share with you a very short PowerPoint, just whose purpose is to kind of contextualize things. So first of all, I'm not sure that all of you or most of you understood geographically where this village is located. So what you're seeing here is really quite a zoom out. And if we take a look at the map that's in the center over here, and you can notice on the left-hand side, I put a red arrow, which is pointing to exactly where Neve Shalom is, and my cursor is also here at the same time. You'll notice that Neve Shalom appears to be on just above a green line, and it's quite below another green line. And this color is not accidental. You've seen this kind of strange ribbon smack in the middle here, but if you look at the far right, that ribbon turns into a solid green line, if you follow my cursor. And if you look at the upper northern part of the map on the left-hand side, also the ribbon turns into a solid green line. And in fact, that is the famous green line, the armistice line between Israel and Jordan between 1949 and 1967, for those 19 years. What you're seeing here is something unusual. This is kind of a no man's land. We had this also in Jerusalem, where there's a no man's land between Israel and Jordan for those 19 years. And you'll please note Neve Shalom is actually located in that no man's land. And this is kind of important piece to the story because it's also referenced to a certain extent in the film. And we'll get to that. Just in terms of those of you, I think most of you, almost all of you have been to Israel. So you see just slightly above Neve Shalom, it says in red, it says Latrun. And those of you who've been to the Armored Corps Memorial, the Tank Museum over here, so that should resonate for you. And probably a lot of you have either visited or driven by the new city of Modi'in, which is up above over here as well. So just giving you a sense of what we're talking about, Neve Shalom is located something to the tune of 25 miles west of the city of Jerusalem. That'll be on the right-hand side of the map. And it's about 25 minutes east of Tel Aviv. Okay, so you kind of get a sense, it's kind of mid-range between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv in this area over here. But this location here where is it over the green line, inside the green line? Actually, it's in between. Yeah, it's in this ribbon, no man's land. And this is also an interesting part of the political story here. So that's the first thing. The second thing I'd like to do with you is I want to make some order for all of us about the different civil status we have of Arabs in the area between the Jordan River, which I'm tracing here with my cursor, and the Mediterranean Sea, between the river and the sea, because this also speaks to our subject. So what you're seeing here, I'm gonna relate to State of Israel, which I'm covering with my cursor. I'm going to relate to Judea and Samaria / West Bank over here. I'm going to relate to the Gaza Strip, and I'm also going to relate to Jerusalem itself. So the State of Israel, 21% of its citizens, that constitute close to 2 million people, are Arabs. I'll say it again, the opposite way. 21% of the citizens of the State of Israel are Arabs, 92% of whom are Muslim, and the other 7% are either Christian or Jews or other, but not Muslim. So 92% are Muslim, Sunni Muslims, and they are full citizens of the State of Israel. The Arabs we're relating to in this film, who live in Neve Shalom, are citizens of the State of Israel. How they define themselves, what is their identity, that's another question entirely. But they're full citizens of the State of Israel in terms of the law. Okay, in terms of the law. When we look at Jerusalem, okay, and here you see Jerusalem in front of you. Jerusalem is what you see inside this purple line that I'm tracing here. This purple line I'm tracing for you is the municipal boundary of Jerusalem, okay, covering over 80 square miles. Within this purple line, you can see there are green patches. These green patches you see are Arab communities, Arab neighborhoods, Arab villages that are part of municipal Jerusalem. They're about 365,000 people. They constitute 39% of the residents of Jerusalem. And 99% of these Arabs of East Jerusalem are not citizens of the State of Israel, but rather they are permanent residents of Jerusalem. A very tiny percentage, it's like 18,000 or 20,000 out of the 365,000 are actually full citizens of the State of Israel. But the majority, the overwhelming majority, are full permanent residents of Jerusalem, which is kind of like having a green card in America. Okay, not a citizen, but having all kinds of rights. So that's the second status. First status we said, full citizens of the State of Israel, almost 2 million people. Okay, in this territory I'm tracing. Second status, the Arabs of East Jerusalem, most of whom are permanent residents of Jerusalem, but not full citizens. And the third status are the Palestinians of the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, or the Gaza Strip, that have zero civil status in Israel. Okay, I just wanted to frame that because what's important for our purposes, the purpose of the film, is that the Palestinians we're talking about in the village, they're also Israeli citizens. Okay, and I know it's confusing for some of you because they were talking a little bit about their identity, and I wanted to make some sense of that for you. So that was something that was also important. Next thing I want to talk about is something that you saw at the very end of the film, what took place in April, May of 2021. And that was the outbreak of violence between Jewish and Arab citizens of the State of Israel in the so-called mixed cities, which I'm actually showing here on the map. What does that mean, mixed cities? So first of all, we're talking about here, the larger ones are Beersheba, okay, Ramle, Lod, Tel Aviv, Jaffa, Haifa, Akko, okay, and this area of Nazareth and Upper Nazareth, and to a certain extent, much lesser extent, the city of Carmiel. These are the so-called mixed cities, which means that we have Arabs and Jews living. Of course, what you don't see over here is Jerusalem, which is the mixed city, as I mentioned before. It's not on this map. And there was actually a lot less violence over here in 2021, but this is actually the city that has the largest percentage of Arab residents, and also the largest number in absolute terms. So again, in Jerusalem, we're talking about 39% of the residents are Arabs, and there are about 365,000 people out of 1 million. Okay, that's in Jerusalem. The percentages in the rest of these cities are much, much lower. In Ramle Lod, they get to like somewhere between around 20%. In Haifa, they're, I don't know, 10% or something like that. Tel Aviv, Jaffa, also it's a small percentage. Okay, same thing in Beersheba. But the idea is that we have these cities which are known in Israel as mixed cities in that sense, and it's in most of, but not all of these cities where we had the outbreak of the violence that you saw in the film towards the very, very end of the film. So I just want you to get a sense of what that was all about. Okay, maybe a few words about just the history of the site, because it was danced around, but I think it wasn't really said directly. So the initiative for the establishment of the community is not a kibbutz, it's a small community, was by a Dominican friar, a Dominican monk, Bruno Hussar, who started his life as a secular Jew. And later on in his life, he converted to Catholicism. That took place in France. He witnessed terrible anti-Semitism there. Somebody was born in 1911, so he went. He survived the atrocities of World War II. I'm not talking about being in a concentration camp, but he saw these things, and at the end of the day, he had this vision of trying to create some kind of place where Jews, Christians, and Muslims would live together as neighbors in a shared society. And he managed to get land. He managed to rent land, not purchase, rent land from Latrun Monastery. They basically gave, for a very, very small pittance, they gave that section of land over to him in order to establish the community. And from the get-go, the idea was to be 50% Jews and 50% Arabs. But again, we talk about Arabs. The Arabs could be Christians, they could be Muslims. Okay, it's a mixed bag. And clearly, we're talking about people who all are citizens. This is not a national initiative by the state of Israel. This is a private initiative. It was on land that, as I showed you on the map, was no man's land. I mean, as far as Israel is concerned, it belongs to the state of Israel. But in terms of international law, if you will, it's this kind of no man's land between what was Israel and Jordan up until 1967, which is interesting in of itself. And it also leads to the fact they've had a lot of difficulty expanding the community because they're not really getting permits from Israel to do so. And Israel kind of ignored the place for a long time, and then was not so happy about it. And there's a question about what about the school system? Shouldn't the state be financing? We can talk to Mayan about that as well. But I'm just trying to give you a sense that this is not a public state initiative. This is a private initiative, and the people who chose to live there under their own volition. We're going to have also Mayan and I will have a conversation about that as well. Okay, so I just wanted to give you a sense of that as well. You saw there the different clips of violence, and I think there were things there both from the first and second Intifada. So just to remind you what we're talking about, 1987 in the Gaza Strip, we had 20 years after the Six-Day War, we had the outbreak of civil disobedience and violence, which the Palestinians called the First Intifada, and it lasted 1987 to 1991. And this is something that, of course, is going to not destabilize, but it's going to speak to a certain extent to the Arab citizens of the state of Israel as well. And then, of course, from 2000 to 2005-06, you had the second Intifada, a very violent one. And I'm going to have a conversation with Mayan also together with you about what happened in the community during those years. one of the things that was it stood out in the film, and I just want to relate to it just for a few moments, was a terrible chopper disaster. We had two Sikorsky helicopters that were heading to Lebanon that actually they weren't shot down. It was an accident. They crashed into each other and fell inside of Israel, just inside of Israel, on top of a community called Shal Yishuv. Over 70 military personnel were killed there, including one of the sons, as you saw, of the community itself. It was a huge disaster, and it speaks it speaks. I'm saying in brackets now to a period that many people have forgotten, which is from 1982 to 2000. Israel was ensconced militarily in a security zone in southern Lebanon. So I want to remind you of that. We pulled out of there in the summer of 2000. And finally, some of you may have heard of or visited a special project or program that smacks. It sounds somewhat similar, but it really isn't. Not exactly to what's being done in the Neve Shalom, and that is the hand in hand school system. So there are five schools which are actually semi-public, semi-private schools, also private initiative, but the government at the end of the day began to take responsibility of them, where from K to 12 these are bilingual schools where we are being taught parallel simultaneously in Hebrew and Arabic from K to 12. There's a big one and a fairly successful one in Jerusalem. So there are five nationally. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that the school that Mayan grew up in, well, he said in the film as well, only went from K to 8, and then the kids had to leave the community and go to other public schools, and that caused all kinds of issues. You heard, but the hand-to-hand school, whereas they may have learned something and they conferred with the educators at Neve Shalom, it's not exactly the same programs. Neve Shalom, people are living together. Okay, they have a school there, but they're living together in a community with all that entails in a small community, right? Peyton Place, like a small community. Everybody knows everybody else's business. It's a small community, right? Like a kibbutz, but not a kibbutz in the sense of size. That's what I mean. But it's not the same. The hand-in-hand program are basically schools, and people are not living together. They're coming there. So without further ado, I'm taking off the share screen and inviting Mayan to join us. Hopefully, here you are. Hi, Mayan. Thank you
Hi.
so much for joining us. Are you in Neve Shalom right now?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I'm
So
I'm in my childhood home,
your childhood home, nice. You threw your parents out.
more or less. Yeah.
Nice, nice.
I
Okay.
I'm living in the second floor, and my brother lives above me.
Oh wow. Okay. So you really are an Arab village. I'm just kidding. Okay, that was not nice, but
Yeah, yeah,
but you got the joke. Nobody else understood the joke. Okay,
yeah.
but I'll explain afterwards, everybody. So okay, I'm glad you brought your parents in because the first question I wanted to ask you really was tell us a little bit about your parents and their decision to join the Neve Shalom. I mean, you're there because of them, not because of you. I mean, now you're because of you, but not initially.
So first of all, before I start, I want to really very much thank you for having me here. It's a great honor, a great pleasure to be here. And I also want to say thank you, Avi, for your wonderful exposition. I think I want to take you to every screening I make. You really did an amazing job, and I'm really thinking how much context is missing in my film that people don't really understand when I'm talking about it. And I go straight away to what I felt, to what people felt, instead of for a moment understanding that there's so much information that for me is just, you know, normal. I don't even think about. And for a person that lives abroad, it needs to, to understand all this stack of information that is crucial to understand the film. And I was wondering how it was to actually see the film without understanding all the context that you brought. So like you actually made me think about all those very very important information that maybe I should start saying in the next time I'm talking about the film. So thank you for that. And if anyone from the audience will want to answer my question, which is how it was watching the film without this context and how much it was crucial, I would really appreciate it. And the second thing I want to say, that every once in a while I'll probably forget a word in English because that's how my brain works. I don't know why. My father is from South Africa, and he spoke to me English since I was born. But for I don't know why, whenever I speak, every time I get this thing that words just blank. So Avi, you will help me with that. You will be my Google Translate for today. Okay. And you're asking me about my parents. So I think I already start answering by saying that my father is from South Africa, which is almost all the reason. My two parents were a couple of actors, hippies at the time. They were looking for a community. They were both living in Tel Aviv back then. Actually, my mother is originally from Jerusalem, and she came from a very, very different background than my father. They're very, very different. Uh, they're kind of like, black and white in terms of Israel. Like she's a Sephardic, you say. She comes from let's say traditional. In Hebrew you say traditional, for people that are brought up not into religious but from a more traditional background. They so in Jerusalem, Sephardic. My grandfather is from Yemen, my grandmother from Iraq, and the other side, my father, he has an American father who actually fought in the Second World War. He was helping Jews escaping the Holocaust, and that's how he came to Israel. And my grandmother, she came from South Africa. They met in Israel. They moved to a kibbutz, Mayan Baruch, whoever know it, in the north. And after my father was born, and after 2 years, my grandmother was sick, and she wanted to come back home to South Africa to her family, and that's what they did. And since then, my father grew up in South Africa. Uh, but growing up in South Africa, those years, it was between 51 to 60. He was 15 when he came back. So yeah, 13 years later. So it was apartheid time, and my father was very much affected by the apartheid. He saw it. When he came back to Israel, he really felt that he doesn't want to re-experience this, and to re-experience this for his children. So his idea of going to a community like Neve Shalom Salam is a way of making a correction in history. And
Were they
wow,
founded?
I came back from 2 weeks in the States of showing the film, and the difference between a Zoom meeting to a screening, that you feel every feedback from the audience, and suddenly you feel like you're in an aquarium and you're talking to yourself, so you have no idea if you're boring the people or you're saying something interesting. So that's a very suddenly a strange experience for me. So I will just end in saying that he really wanted to come. My mother, she had like a feeling about it, because although when she was 8, at the end of the war, it was a 67 war, she saw all the deportees, you say, the people that were expelled, Palestinians that were in Jerusalem, and they were, because of the war, um, right? Up, you say deportees.
I'm not sure if they were deported. People fled. I think people fled in
Yeah,
'67.
people
It's
fled,
different
and
from
so
'48.
because of the war. Anyway, what she saw, like, really a shayara. How do you say shayara?
Convoys.
Yeah, of people. And she asked her parents, "Who are they?" And they said, "Those are Palestinians. Those are Arabs." And she said, "That can't be. They're humans." Because all of her life she heard about them as those horrible, horrible people that are trying to kill us, and suddenly she see people. So for her, she did have this idea from a very early age that she doesn't think as the people surrounding her, but it doesn't mean she didn't grow up in education of telling her all her life how much the Arabs are our enemies. And suddenly my father wants to take her to a community that you live with them and you grow up, your children of them. Like there is one thing of saying, okay, they're human beings and we can live with them. Like we don't want to make war with them, but it's another thing to actually go there and to educate your kids there. So she had a very mixed feelings about the idea, but he was very much insisted about it. He liked the place, he felt connected, he felt belonged. So he took her there and he was really insisted about it. But during the years, I think they flipped in a way. He wanted to leave, or maybe every once in a while they change places. But for us kids, we didn't choose anything. So for us, it was really like, that's it. That's what you have.
Okay, so I just want to explain to everybody something here to clarify, because I think even Israelis don't really understand this. For a very long time in Israel, the concept was those that say in the peace camp to have coexistence. Okay, dukiyum, coexistence, and coexistence really means I sit here, you sit there, we don't hit each other.
Yeah.
The concept in Neve Shalom is not coexistence; it's shared society, and shared society is a different concept from coexistence. Shared society says we're all going to be harnessed to the wagon and we're going to pull it together. That's not the same thing as coexistence. And I think that's that's what you kind of describe about your mother. So okay, I want to coexist with them, not necessarily live together with them in a shared society. So you already opened this door. So let's go through this door. Do you think that it's possible, well, in your experience, to have a shared society parallel to the relationship between the state of Israel and the territories? Okay, the relationship between the state of Israel and the West Bank, Judea, and Samaria, the state of Israel and the Gazans. I'm talking about before October 7th. Before October 7th, I mean, is that even as a formula possible? How does that impact the lives inside of the village and the
So
relationship?
when you say shared society, you mean like in Neve Shalom, like Neve Shalom is a model? If you're asking if Neve Shalom is more or less a
No,
model
no,
of
I'm not
something that
asking
is
that. I'm
sustained.
saying I'm asking you to tell us maybe some of the difficulties of having a shared society, okay, when you have this big elephant in the room, which is very, very close by over the green line. You're very close to the green line there, okay? And so it's, I mean, you're literally, okay, depending upon which direction you go, you're like a mile, if you will, from Palestinians that are over the green line, or 3 miles away, different directions. But you're very, very close. Any direction you turn, north or south, your village is very, very close to
Yeah.
Palestinians who are outside of Israel. And how does that impact? How did that impact life in the village before October 7th?
So let's just say Israel is already a shared society. Okay, it is. Whether they want it or not, it is. I mean, uh, Arabs and Jews do share their life together, as you said, more in a coexistence point of view and form of living, less than really trying to build a society together like in Neve Shalom. Which I want to say that I don't think that Neve Shalom is a trying to be like what I say, like a model about it. You know, I think that anyway we have to find a way, and like if it can be or not, for me it's not really something that I can even think about, because there is no other option. We already are in this situation, you understand? So it's hard for me to even answer your question in this way. But if I understand your question, I think Neve Shalom is always like a direct bridge, like a direct connection with anything that is happening outside. Anything that happens straight away affect Neve Shalom, like always. And it's really it's the other way of what people thinking about Neve Shalom. The people in outside of Neve Shalom always think that whatever happens in Neve Shalom is like a bubble. That outside is the reality, and what happened in Neve Shalom is the bubble that we are more or less like protected from it, or we're building something which is artificial and fake and is not, doesn't have to anyway resonate what's going on outside. And actually it is totally wrong. It's totally wrong. What's going on in Neve Shalom is that we straight away, everything that happens affects us. We always, like, no matter what is happening, we we will get it first, and we'll talk about it first and argue about it first, and it will affect us. The people who, like my parents, that were hippie and idealistic and thought we were going to a place that will be kumbaya and flowers and we're going to hug each other all day, they actually, what happened, they got the other way around. They went to a place that is actually living the conflict every day, all the time, and it's really one of the most difficult places to live in, which is totally the other way of what other people thinking about Neve Shalom, about this bubble thing. And actually, I would say that people that live outside with their own people, with their own community, own language, own culture, own everything, they are in the bubble because they don't need to deal with the fact that a couple of meters from them, there are other communities that they are so busy in ignoring their reality, the fact that they're there. You understand what I'm saying? So in Neve Shalom, I always say the people who came there almost like enlisted to be there. Like they came to work in doing this living, doing this communication and dialogue, and which is very, very hard. This is why I don't think that all the places in Israel should be Neve Shalom. Okay, this is why I'm saying it doesn't have to be necessary a model, but it does reflect something. Okay, which I think is the most important thing. Okay.
Mayan, you know what's interesting is that in the film, some of the people from that you took from old film clips who were being interviewed actually were expressing themselves the opposite way, as if they would like to constitute a model. And all the years that I was going there with groups and we meet people there, they say we don't see ourselves as a model. We're not telling the state of Israel this is how everybody should live. They said this is how we want to live. This is how we want to live with all its difficulties. Okay, but we're not telling others that we think that everybody has to live this way. And there's always this kind of tension between this idealized version of it and the reality inside, which is very much, I think, expressed by people that we were meeting there. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Tell us about what's been going on there since October 7th. Discussions that you're having with each other, or how you're feeling, because your film ends, if I understood correctly, your film ends like 1 minute after May 2021. I mean, you see the Jewish and Arab rioting in the mixed cities, and you're fleeing, you're getting as fast as you can from Tel Aviv, wherever you're living, back to Neve Shalom, and it kind of ends over there. Okay, and I assume that it's kind of ending around 2022. And so, what happened since the end of the film, since the end of your filming, were two things. We had the most right wing and religious, and let me put it very honestly, not so Arab friendly. Okay, that was a euphemism. Government in Israel's history, where we have senior cabinet members who are openly racist, unabashedly. Okay, and we have October 7th. So how is all that? What is your dialogue inside your community look like, both among yourselves, let's say within your family, you, your parents, and your brother and your wife and his wife, whatever, and how does it look between you and your Arab neighbors, friends, childhood friends? What does that look like?
So, like I said before, everything that happens outside affects Neve Shalom straight away. Everything. So, especially politics, especially things like this, and like it didn't help a bit. Let's say, first, like the Arabs, the Palestinians, citizens of Israel, they really reached stage that they're afraid. They're afraid of their life. They're afraid of their freedom of speech. They're afraid of many things that I could never understand. I could never understand the fear of like I do know what it is to think twice about what am I going to say publicly in terms of like public criticism in terms of norms and agenda, but not the same way they feel. They really feel afraid of being arrested of something they said, thought, or anything that can be even misunderstood. There was a very,
After October 7th, you mean?
very,
I'm asking you, after October 7th, you mean?
yes,
Okay,
yes. But
okay,
even before that, they felt
okay.
always, okay, they always felt the second layer, second class in this society that always need to feel a bit warned, a bit watched that they're the enemy inside the house. This is how they felt, and especially like government like this. Okay, but October 7 was something that was bigger than anything that anyone has experienced, I think, in the history of Israel. Since 48, no one here has ever experienced something like that. And even though in May, what happened in May, when in my film, um, was a really horrifying event, history always managed to overcome, and that's the most saddest and frightening thing. So that's something that really no one ever expects, and everyone were in shock. Really, everyone were in shock and didn't really know how to actually understand it. And I think, like any other place, even in Neve Shalom, it affected us, and until now, okay, when we still don't know what will be the end of the effect. But I think what happened in Neve Shalom was that even though this thing has made a very big, I would say, hole. Okay, I think the first hole is in the heart, really, for me at least. But in the community, because this kind of thing really touched the most sensitive points in every person that lives here. So it shaked something, and there were very hard talking and dialogue about arguments. People cried. People really, there were hard moments about this thing, and it really it felt very frightening, very scary, very depressing. But I think what was the strength of this community that they didn't stop there. Okay, whoever was in charge, whoever was in, they decided to continue talking and to continue. And I think that was the power of this community, because they talked and we talked and we talked, and you saw that even though they were agreeing, I would say people didn't agree about all the stuff, even though that people felt really hard things, very hard feelings, they continue talking and continue understanding that we are working on a dialogue, and that's the most important thing. Okay, we can never agree about everything. Okay, but as long as you continue the dialogue and you continue respecting the other person, the other side, and you don't use violence in order to make sure that your opinions are the most important and your right is the most important, and your people in your country and everything you believe in is the only and the most important. I think that's the way of this community that is very much should be reflected to the rest of the world. Okay, because it's not a perfect one, and there's a lot of, we're human beings like any other person. Like, I talked to a person that works here and he's right wing, but he really helped building a lot of houses here, and he said, there was an argument about a fence, a Jew and an Arab, and they fought and they couldn't agree. And I came and I managed to help the way, and they stopped fighting after I talked with them. So if I come and I'm a right wing, and I could, so how come you that you all of your life are living together and you cannot even agree about a fence? I told him that's it. We're just people. We are not different than any other person. We're normal people that decided to live together, and we fight, and we're like any other person. So that's the thing.
I want to continue this conversation and even continue that last sentence, but I actually want to open up for other people because I was sort of curious if the fights, I assume, are also between Jews and Arabs, but let's not go down that road right now. I want to open up the questions in the chat and give people opportunity to interact with you because that's more important. And so I'm going to do that with your permission. Okay, so question could be you or me, it doesn't matter. Doris is asking, is this mixed composition only in Neve Shalom or there are other communities like Neve Shalom? You want to answer it?
Yeah. So, like the last title of the film, which said that Neve Shalom actually was never expanded on the lands of the state of Israel. That actually says everything because Israel had never, unfortunately, the interest of having this community expanding or any community as such existing in the land of Israel. It doesn't. I don't want to speak about in name of the people in charge, but I think it says everything.
So Doris is also asking, do you, Mayan, still believe that it's possible to live peacefully with Arabs after October 7th?
So I think that there was a very, very, uh, in my idea, misconcept of what happened in October 7 in terms of history of the coexistence between the Arabs and the Jews. In my opinion, I think October 7 just proved my opinion all those years, which means that if you continue the way we're doing now, which is no agreement, no peace, and only one way, one one way,
Unilaterally, if we go unilaterally.
unilaterally policy leads to violence and between both sides. And Hamas was never a group, an organization that was in favor of doing anything positive with the state of Israel and letting him be and flourish the way the state of Israel has did for all those years will lead to only one thing, which is that, okay? I don't see Hamas as the representative of all Palestinians. I see the history of what happened all those years reflecting that the moment you don't build a normal leadership, you don't give her the skills, the way, and all the condition to flourish, then you get another leadership that actually you together all the political gifts and you let her flourish, then you get the support of the people because the people want a strong leadership that will make improvement. And unfortunately, this horrible organization is the organization that had the condition to flourish and to get the support of the people. So this is not a surprise that October 7th had happened, unfortunately, to my eyes. Okay? Now, if you're asking if at the moment, after all those horrible things happen on both sides, we can have peace, I think the chances now are lower than we ever had, and I'm very depressed, and I'm very
Pessimistic.
how do you say meyuash? Um,
I'm despaired. You're despaired and you're pessimistic. You're in despair. In despair.
yes, but I still think that's the only way. There's no other way. Either we continue killing each other or we get an agreement that we stop doing that. I think that's the two options. It's not about, like, when you ask, is there an option to do that? You kind of ask, do you want to still continue killing each other? That's how I see this question. Because in my point of view, both people won't go anywhere. So the faster we will go to an agreement, some kind of agreement, the faster we'll stop killing each other. This is how I see the
Susan was
situation.
asking, were there any people in the community that thought that Hamas's actions could be justified?
So I think the word justified is a strong word, but something that was very insulting to the Jewish side in Neve Shalom, but I would think in in progressive Jewish Israelis in general in Israel, I think were such a great insult from all over the world, that after mentioning October 7, there was the word but. And after those horrific events, no matter what context, no matter what thing, you can never add the word but anything after such events, because those are really, I would say, crimes against humanity, and no context in the world would make them relevant. Will be relevant to it, because there's nothing that could be an excuse for that. So there were attempt to put context to these cases, and some people were very insulted by it, but some Arabs said that they don't see themselves uh, with any connection to Hamas, and they really declared it clearly that they don't stand behind it. They don't think that any violence is anything that is positive in any way. So I think in the end, the most powerful voice was that, but in a way, people were insulted, and it's not new that people all over the world go first of all with the victims that seem the weakest, and they don't they, it's hard to see a more complicated view, but in my view, I think it's something that is really very clear.
So Eileen's asking, in the film, it seemed the grown children, the grown people who grew up, left the village because they were not so happy. Why did so many of them return? At least based on what
So
you showed in the film.
okay, so I don't think they were not happy in the village. I think my experience was to my surprise, was very specific to me. Like, most of the people I spoke with, they didn't share the same experience of confusion and feeling all those very, eh, I would say, I don't find the right word, but it wasn't easy for me. But what I learned in this film, that not everyone felt this way. People wanted to go out. It's a small community, small place. There's nothing to do here. Even a store, a grocery store, we don't have here. So there's not much reasons to stay. Uh, I would say almost most of the children want to come back, because, first of all, let's start talking about the Palestinians. it's not the same like the Jews. The Palestinians, they don't have anywhere else to live in Israel in with this specific condition. It's like I would say it's the best place for Palestinians to live in Israel because it's the only place that the amount of equality will be as such. And another thing is that the Arab Palestinians, communities, cities, villages are in a very low socioeconomic situation, and Neve Shalom is a place that the construction, infrastructure, schools, all of this is in a very, very uh, high class, I would say,
Level.
if you compare it in a high level, if you compare it to all of them. And they won't feel racism. Everywhere they will go in Israel, they will feel that they're the Arabs, they're the Palestinians. Me, and when I lived in Tel Aviv, I never felt it. I did feel it when I was in high school and people knew where I'm coming and they wanted to, you know, to do that. But for me, I can go everywhere I want in Israel and it will be fine. I have my own issues in a way, but I would say most of them just came because they wanted to bring their children the same education they received. And it's, in a way for us, we didn't feel it's so hard like our parents. So we don't have the feeling, oh, we suffered all these years, so we don't want to come back. Our parents are those who really, it was hard for them. But for us, no, we played here in the fields.
Okay, so here's a totally different question, but probably not something you haven't heard before. Joan is asking, how did romantic relationships work?
So when you said about the elephants in the room, I think that's the elephant in the room. That's the first, thing that everybody asks me, and I can understand why. It's very interesting, and it actually I have a very interesting answer for it because the truth is that in a Veshalom, because of this, fear of this mixed community that we will start, mixing each other and having this really new type of people, actually that this made a taboo that it never happened. We don't have any mixed couples in the village. In 50 years, more or less, that the village exists, we don't have, except one. And now I will give you the very interesting details about this one couple. That, first of all, she was in the film and you saw her. So she is half Jewish and half Muslim. Her father is a Muslim, her mother is Jewish. And actually, they met in the first or the second meeting when the village was not a village even. They were both coming and they met, when they were teenagers and it wasn't a village yet. Okay. And they became a couple. Okay. So she and Sami, which is actually my age, he's the brother of Rami who was in the film. He is half Christian and half Muslim. So they became a couple, and they're the only couple that was became in the village. Not only mixed couple, any couple. Okay, they're the only couple that met in the village, and both of them are mixed. I think there is a reason why both of them met each other, and another reason is that I don't know if you know much about like the kibbutzim next door. When you live together in such a small community, you kind of feel like siblings. So you don't really want to be with the people who grew up with you.
Yeah, I actually thought that you were going to answer that because you find it's very, very seldom in the kibbutzim or shavim, everybody's Jewish, that because the kids all know each other from age 0 and it's too small a society, everybody knows everybody else's business. I think that you don't, I thought you were going to say that. It's interesting, it's somewhat taboo. So here's another question from Terry. Who owns the homes in the community? And how do they choose the people who live there? In parentheses, is there a long, very long waiting list?
So that's a very interesting question, because that's a question that was very, very relevant in the 80s and the 90s. Because back then, actually, the village owned most of the houses, and people came and they were living in a house, like a temporary house for a year, and then after a year they were being voted if they would stay or not. And that was when things were much more, I would say, like social in a way, like it wasn't a kibbutz. People had salaries, and people actually worked outside. Some worked in the village, but really in a very symbolic salaries. And it was a very, very much more like a community then, in like in an ideological way. And I think what happened was that they made a change uh, because people started working outside and they had bigger salaries. And then the whole idea of money changed very much the concept of the community, and people start building their houses, and suddenly houses were so big, and the people who were living in those small, tiny houses of the village, it made this really feeling of gap. So, and the whole idea of money really had changed the village very much. And today it's a very different village. Today, if you want to be part of this community, you first have to buy your land. That's one of the that you could buy your land. And of course, you come and being voted, and you have conversation, and they're trying still to find people that are fitting this community by ideology. But at the same time, the money thing takes a part. And in my idea, it changed the people who came here, the people who come here. Suddenly, it's not the same people. The idealistic people that came usually are people without money. So that are the people who came back then. And today, they're very doctors and professors and all those people that, in their opinion, can be very much in favor of the village. But in reality, there are people that are careeristic, you know, people that are more to their house. And then the feeling is it's just a couple of people that living together in the same place, in a way. So that's a bit of criticism I put inside there.
Okay, let's shift back to the elephant in the room. Doris is asking, how do you feel when people call Israel an apartheid country? How do you feel when people call Israel an apartheid country?
So me personally, I feel that Israel is not an apartheid country. Okay, so this term is not true, like de facto, if you're looking. But another fact is that we have the best West Bank. Okay, the West Bank is run by Israel, and there are millions of people there that have different rights, and that's another fact. Okay, and if we, the state of Israel, which is not an apartheid state because they are a Palestinian citizen of Israel, they, in a way, get the same rights as the Israeli, which is not true all the way, but still. But if we look at the West Bank, which is, we'd say, a no man's land, and no rules over there. So over there, yes, it's not, I would say, idyllic. Okay, I will try to be as most gentle that I can. Okay, so we're not heading, and we are not heading to the right way since 67, but I think we're now rushing to the wrong way with this type of government we have. And that's our mistake that we're just continuing building and building. The more we will do it, the more problematic I think the situation will be.
Let me translate what Mayan said. He said basically inside the state of Israel, Israel's not an apartheid state. Okay, that the Arabs, the citizens of the state of Israel, have equal rights by law, but sometimes there are problems with the application of that. Okay, but by law they're equal. But over the green line in the territories, it's more of an apartheid regime. Okay, and that's, if I could just express what you said a little bit more sharply in that sense. Anne is saying that the social change that you described in your community sounds similar to what's happened in some of the kibbutzim moshavim today. That you have some members of moshavim and some members of kibbutzim that are also become nouveau riche or become, have a lot of money, and others don't, and you're starting to see a kind of a social stratification, libud cheprati, a social stratification within those communities. It sounds similar to what your community is experiencing, maybe.
So, first of all, I want to answer this, but I think I want to explain that just your explanation about my words is that it's very important to me to clear that I don't think that it is black and white. Like, I know that what Israel is doing in the West Bank, in a way, very much is connected to security. And I don't want to say, okay, all of this is just bad and what we're doing is bad and there is no reason for that. Okay, I'm not getting to politics and what is right and wrong. I'm just saying that the fact is that there are people there that have less rights in a lot of fields. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Okay, and Israel is doing there whatever it wants, and that's another fact. Okay, so that's two facts, so that I'm not getting to judgment that this is good, this is bad, or this is okay. I'm just saying we shouldn't be there, and we should find a solution in order for everyone in this region to have equal rights. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Okay, so for what you were saying about it's exactly what I feel, that Neve Shalom is like in a social experiment, that everything affects her, and not only politics affects her, also the economical change that happened in this world and in this country, the same like other villages in the area. So many things that are in Neve Shalom are very, very dramatic, are very dramatic in every small community we have. Okay, so that's something I always say to people, that why is this? Why is this? And say, okay, but it's not special only to Neve Shalom because it's Jews and Arabs. It's because it's people and it's human beings, and we have human beings problems. Okay, so that's my
So
answer
last
for that.
question, Mayan, very last question. This is from Susan. Since October 7th, has the village instituted any new security changes or enhancements? Ken Shipurim, what have you done in terms of security since October 7th?
So that's funny. You know why? Because I think Neve Shalom was one of the really, I would say, the highest stress location target, because both sides can start thinking that we're people to put their anger about. The Palestinians can come and tell us that we're traitors, and the Jews can come and say you have Palestinians enemies here. So we're really in this fear, I would say. But why am I laughing? Because we are in this pacifistic approach, a liberal approach, in order to actually enhance the security. Like we do have a security guard and a fence and a gate since 2 years ago, from other events that really, just to explain about them, would take me another hour. So let's say we have them already, but even the guard don't have a gun. Okay, so we decided to have like a communal guarding, that two volunteers will come and they will replace each other all night, all night we'll have 2 volunteers and we have a car and we walk around, but we didn't have any weapons because we couldn't agree about having weapons. So what happened was you were walking around, with the torch. Okay, I was doing it as
Flashlight,
well,
with a
and you
flashlight.
always feel so ridiculous because if people will come, you just light them and you show them, hello, we have lights, and that's they could do whatever they want. So that was our way of dealing with the security. But because you said it's the last question, and it's kind of connected to October 7, I do have something that I would want to add personally, because it's something that is very much painful to me. And I think it's very much my responsibility, if I'm talking to people, to pass it on, is that living in Neve Shalom had made me feel that I'm having dual pain experience. What do I mean? I feel that in this situation since October 7, what happened is, more than any other time in the world history, is that people are stuck to one truth and one narrative, and you just get your own information, you get your own uh, stories from the same news, the same social social networks, and what happened is that you believing one thing, stories, faces are missing from your side, from the other side. And what I believe, because I get both streams of information to hear, because we're living together and we're sharing it all the time, unfortunately, because it's hard, you always get two pains all the time. And for me, it's so hard to live in Israel in the past couple of months. And also because of that. And what I'm trying to say is that a person that thinks that there is only one truth, one pain, I could never relate to, because I feel it, I know it, and it's so important at this time to remember that there is more than one way to tell this story. There is more than one truth, more than one narrative. And in order to continue from our horrible situation is to start understanding that both sides have a truth. And it's so important to me to reflect that, even though it sounds to me מובן מאליו,
Obvious. Obvious.
obvious.
Mayan, thank you so much for being with us. The film, I think, opens a lot of questions and a lot of thoughts for a lot of people. And keep doing what you're doing. Ellen, passing it over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Avi. Thank you, Mayan. A heartfelt thank you to Mayan for sharing this profound journey behind Children of Peace, and of course to Avi for your invaluable insights. This discussion today has deepened our understanding and appreciation of the film's themes and messages. We hope that each of you, and we thank you, each of you, for being an integral part of today's dialogue. We hope that you leave inspired to carry forth the conversations here to your community. We also hope that we'll see you next Wednesday, February 28th at 2 p.m. to our first session in our new series with Tali Nates entitled Lessons in Resilience from the Holocaust and Genocide. Wednesday's session will feature Nicole Fox on memorialization and centering women's experiences in contemporary Rwanda, the resilience of female survivors in the aftermath of genocide. Thank you all for being part of today's event. We look forward to seeing you soon. Stay safe and stay healthy, everyone. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.